Hey, this is an April wrap-up. I just realized I forgot to put makeup on. Do I look okay? I look fine. Hi, I'm Colleen, and welcome to my channel. I mostly talk about books I've read, lots of different genres, and writing I do. And if you would like to follow along, please subscribe and like this video. It would mean a lot to me. Stay tuned to the end of this video because there's going to be a little bit of an update about what this channel is going to sort of morph into over the summer. I read a lot of books in April, perhaps too many books, but I'll go through them. I did read a lot of great books, a few snoozes, but overall, pretty good reading month. And the cool thing about this reading month is I only read romance, fantasy, and 2 graphic novels that you could kind of say are sci-fi fantasy. So I didn't do like my full genre range as I usually do. I really focused in on 2 of my favorite genres. I also read a ton of arcs. So we're going to start with romance, and we'll start with some of the arcs I read. So the first book that's both romance and an arc that I read is The Iron Warrior Returns by Michelle Willingham. And thank you to Harlequin for giving me this arc. I really enjoyed it. So I picked this book up because I have been really into the show The Last Kingdom, and so that's been putting me in kind of like a medieval feel. So I wanted to read a medieval romance. I saw this on NetGalley. I was like, perfect, I'm gonna read it. So I grabbed it, and the premise of the book is we begin, and the characters are a little bit younger because there's a time jump. They're probably like mid-teens, I would guess, and Robert of Penrith is escaping basically like a massacre of his family, and he's escaping with Morwenna and her younger brother, whose name escapes me, but for some reason I think it's Brian, but it might not be. They're basically like running away, and people are trying to kill them, but they get away. Then we have a big time jump, and now they're like in their early 20s, and the person who took over Robert's family's lands is having this tournament, and whoever wins the tournament gets to marry his daughter and then become the heir to this land. So Robert decides that's a fantastic way for him to get his family lands back. Now, through this time, Morwenna has become completely in love with Robert, but she's a commoner, so she knows that they can't be together. He's noble. He wants to get his lands back. Obviously, she's not going to stand in the way of that. So then the rest of the book, we kind of follow what happens when they go to the tournament. Okay, so this book started a little slow for me, and I wasn't really sure if I was going to like it, and I didn't really like Robert. He seemed kind of like a ho-hum hero. And I was also like really convinced this was going to be a book with like a chaste kiss at the end. And I was wrong on a lot of these accounts. So Robert had a great character arc, and by the end, he's like a fantastic medieval romance hero. I always liked Morwenna throughout the book. I thought she had a lot of great qualities. She was a very strong woman. A lot of things happen in the book that are spoilers, so I won't tell you, but sort of like throw her curveballs, and she always lands on her feet, and I liked that about her. The steam level was like medium high, so that really surprised me. And a cool thing about this book, which is very specific to romance, but we have 2 virgin characters, and I felt like the author did a really good job showing like the arc of their physicality with each other in a realistic way. It wasn't like they just fell into bed together and everything was, like everything and fantastic right away. It was kind of like more of a progression, and I really liked that a lot. This book did set up a couple side characters that I think will probably get their own books in this series, because I do know it's going to be a series, and I'll definitely pick them up. And I would say overall I give this book like a 3.75 stars. It was a good read. I liked it. I'd read more by this author. It wasn't like a fantastic favorite romance, but definitely a fun one if you're looking for a medieval romance. The next romance and arc I read is The Scoundrel Falls Hard by Sophie Jordan, and I would like to give Avon the biggest thanks for letting me read this arc because I loved this book. So this is the 3rd book in the Duke Hunt series, and I've read the first 2. The first one is The Duke Falls Hard, I think is what it's called, and the second one is The Rake Gets Ravished. And The Rake Gets Ravished was one of my best reads of 2021 because that book's fantastic also. So this one is no different. It's so good. So we already know our hero and heroine from this series, but Gwen Cully is the heroine in this one, and she's the town's female blacksmith. And a lot of people don't like that they have a female blacksmith, but she's, strong character, trying to keep her business afloat while there are people trying to put her down. The hero is Kellen, and I'm blanking on his last name. Callan Fox. And he is basically a criminal. He's been impersonating the heir to the dukedom in the town this entire time. And the people have found out because the real duke showed up. And the book opens with him on the run. And these people, like the townspeople, are basically trying to murder him. And he hides in Gwen's forge. And she sort of like gets to talking with him. And they have this sort of like instant friendship, but then the townspeople find him and they like drag him to the square to basically hang him. And she panics and says like, you can't kill him, I love him. And then he plays along and they pretend like they're deeply in love. So then everyone's like, okay, if you're in love, get married. So that's where the book starts. This book was so wonderful, and I love Sophie Jordan. I've talked about that a lot, how much I love Sophie Jordan. This book has so many tropes that romance readers love. It has marriage of convenience / sort of like a forced marriage, forced proximity definitely, because once they're engaged, he has to live at her forge because he doesn't have anywhere to live. There's an only one bed trope. There's a like reformed criminal trope. It was so much fun. I loved this book so much. 5 stars. Read it. I'm going to definitely buy this one for my sister for her birthday. Okay, so the next romance I read was not an ARC. I got it from the library, and it was My Fake Rake by Eva Leigh. I really liked this book. So in this book, we have Lady Grace Wyatt, and she is like in love with this guy Mason. So Grace is a like scientist. She's basically like studies amphibians, and she wants to be a naturalist, and she wants to travel around and study amphibians. And she's in love with this guy Mason, who views her as a friend because he is also a naturalist, and she thinks he would be a good husband who wouldn't care that she wanted to do these not very ladylike things and like continue studying science and all that stuff. Her father gets ill and says he'd really like her to get married, so she decides it's time to like try to get Mason, but she's very socially awkward. So she asks her other really good friend, who's an anthropologist, Sebastian, if he will sort of like transform into a rake, court her so that Mason starts to view her as like a woman and not like a pal. So Sebastian loves Grace, but he's not noble, so he knows they can never be together. So what ends up happening is they give Sebastian a makeover, and he has like a Cinderella moment in which he gets a haircut, some new clothes, and stops wearing his glasses, and suddenly he's like dashingly handsome. And they court to try to make Mason jealous, and you can understand where that goes. This book was such a delight. We have 2 main characters who have no social skills whatsoever and are just like big nerds, and I loved that. And they have so much in common because of that. We also have like the flipped male Cinderella trope was really fun. There's a fantastic scene in a barn. This was just such like a joy to read. I had such a good time reading it, and I'm definitely going to read the rest of this series because this was the first book in the Union of Rakes. And there's a side character who's Sebastian's best friend, who's a duke, who I assume is going to get his own book, and he was a really fun character as well. I give this book 4.5 stars. Very fun historical romance. My next romance I read is also a library book, and it was Do You Want to Start a Scandal by Tessa Dare. This book is book 4 in The Castles Ever After and book 5 in Spindle Cove. Though I haven't read all of Spindle Cove, I have read all of Castles Ever After, and it took me to like 50% of the book to figure out how this was connected, that the hero is the brother from book 2's hero. And I was like, it took me a long time. So you could definitely read this as a standalone. Like, it felt more like a standalone to me than like cemented in a series. So this is like a fun premise. We start at a party, and Charlotte is our heroine, and she's kind of like snooping around, and she comes upon Lord Granville / Piers, who's the hero. And they get kind of like caught behind a curtain together because they hear people coming into the room, and they can't be alone together because they're not married. And the people who come in the room like very loudly hook up, and they're kind of frozen there and they don't know what to do. But then the people escape and they get caught because everyone could hear them, and so everyone thinks it was them, so they have to get married. And Charlotte is determined to solve the mystery of who the couple was so she doesn't have to marry Lord Granville, because she views him as kind of like, he's hot, but he's kind of old, and like his personality's not great. Pierce, on the other hand, is like, yeah, I'll marry Charlotte. She's young, she's pretty, and she's kind of feisty, and I've sworn never to fall in love, so an arranged marriage is great for me. Any hero that swears never to fall in love, is going to fall head over heels in love. This has all the great like Tessa Dare stuff in it. The heroine's really funny. The steamy scenes are very steamy. It's a fun plot. I really enjoyed reading it. It's a quick read. definitely pick it up if you like historical romance and haven't read it yet. I'd give this one probably 4 stars. It wasn't my favorite Tessa Dare, but it was still like a complete joy to read. Next up, we have Barbarian Lover by Ruby Dixon, and thank you to Berkeley for the arc. So they're re-releasing the arcs for these because Berkeley is publishing them in like trade paperbacks, so you can buy them at like Barnes and Noble and stuff with like a new cover. And this is the 3rd one in the Ice Planet Barbarian series, and we're back. We're back on the planet. We're back with the tall blue aliens and the human women who have crashed on their planet. We're back with the Kui, the parasite that lives in their chest and tells them who their soulmate they're going to make a baby with is. This one was a little different, which I liked a lot. So our heroine is Kira, and Kira is really keeping everyone at arm's length because she knows she's never going to resonate with someone, which is when like the Kui tells you like that's the person you're going to make a baby with. Because she had an operation when she was a kid, and I think it was like her appendix ruptured, and that she was told that she could never have children. So she doesn't really want to form any relationships because she doesn't want to be heartbroken. The hero is Ahako, I think is how you say his name, and he's really into Kira, and he's trying to court her and trying to, you know, get her to like him, and doesn't understand why she's keeping him at an arm's length. I really like this one because it's different than the rest in that these two build a relationship without like that insta-love Kui thing going on. They build their relationship before any of that happens and become friends and then obviously become lovers. So this is really more like a friends to lovers story. There's also some big plot stuff that happens in terms of like the aliens that had originally kidnapped them, trying to come back to the planet and try to pick them up. This book had a lot of funny moments in it that I really liked, and Ahako is probably my favorite barbarian so far. I did really enjoy him. I mean, these books I all give like 4.5 stars to. You like burn through them. They're like eating cake and you just can't get enough of it, and it tastes delicious, and I'm gonna read the rest of them, obviously, and hopefully I'm gonna keep getting arcs because I really enjoy them, and hopefully Berkeley is enjoying my positive reviews. Next, and my last romance and last arc, is Wicked Beauty by Katee Robert. Thank you to Sourcebooks Casablanca for the arc because I did very much enjoy it. This is book 3 in the Dark Olympus series. I read book 1, but then I did not read book 2, and I will say that it was fine reading book 3, skipping book 2. I didn't skip book 2 for any reason, just that I sort of like forgot that it came out and never read it, and then I got the arc for this one. But you could totally read this one without reading the other 2. And in my opinion, I think it's pretty well set up that you can. So a little background on the series. This takes place in Olympus, but it's not like Greek gods Olympus. It's like this urban fantasy setting where the title of the Greek, like the names of the Greek gods are actually like government titles in like a sort of corrupt government. But so like Zeus is actually Perseus, and this book follows the death of the last Ares, and now the position of Ares needs to be filled, which is basically like the leader of the armies. We start with Perseus, the new Zeus, offering whoever wins the competition to become the next Ares the hand of Helen. And Helen is the most beautiful woman in Olympus, and Perseus is her brother, and she's very mad about this, that he has done this, and she wanted to be Ares. So she decides to enter the competition to become Ares. Our other narrators are Achilles, who also wants to become Ares, and he is currently a general in Athena's army. Athena also has an army. And Patroclus, who is a soldier for Athena, and he and Achilles are in an open relationship, but very loving. All 3 of them enter the competition, and then you can guess what happens. I would best describe this book as if in Hunger Games, Katniss and Peeta and Gale were in a menage, but Peeta and Gale started being in love. This isn't really like a mythology retelling as like Circe is. Like if you're looking for like a Circe, a Song of Achilles, even like a Witch's Heart type book, this isn't for you. If you're looking for like a really, really hot triad with a lot of action and a very physical competition, this is the book for you. I do have to say, this is the first menage book I've ever read in which I felt like every character loved each other equally. You don't feel like Achilles and Patroclus have a stronger relationship than either of them have with Helen, and you don't feel like Achilles and Helen or Achilles and Patroclus have a stronger relationship than the other. It's so even, which I really liked. And Katee Robert did a really good job at making sure that everybody was sort of loved equally. That was fantastic. I gave this book 4 stars. I think it's a really fun urban fantasy romance bordering on erotica. And if you're looking for something with like a menage and a little taboo, definitely pick it up. Now we're going to switch to fantasy, and the first fantasy book I read in April was The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. I got this as one of my March Book of the Month books, but I picked 3 books in March, I think, so I'm still catching up even on my March and April books, and as we are now in May. So this book starts with Nell Young finding out that her father has been murdered at his desk at the New York Public Library. Her father is like the best cartographer in the field. She's always looked up to him. But they haven't spoken in about a decade because he fired her from her job at the New York Public Library over like a silly gas station map. That sort of sparks off the beginning of the book, this map, why it's important, why he fired her over it, what happened in his past. And it's kind of like a mystery in terms of like finding out about the past of her father through his old colleagues / friends from school. Okay, so there were a lot of things in this book that really bothered me, and I'm going to go through that. On paper, this looked like the perfect book for me. It's about a library. It's about maps. I have 2 maps hanging in this bed, in this actual room. I am a librarian, but a lot of the details in this book really bothered me. To begin, a huge portion of the character motivations hinges on the fact that the New York Public Library is in financial trouble. It's not. If you want to pick a library that's in financial trouble, pick a rural library or a library in like a super conservative area that doesn't want to give money to libraries. Don't pick the New York Public Library, which is probably the most well-funded library in the world. I would guess it's the most well-funded library in the United States, and it has tons of private donors. So this would never be like a thing. So that was hard to like wrap my mind around. So that was the first thing that was kind of hard for me to wrap my head around. The second thing is a portion of this book takes place in like flashbacks to the past. And in the past, Nell is a baby. And she's a baby that lives with like her parents and their entire group of friends and like goes on all these adventures with them. And it's really obvious when you read something written by someone who doesn't have children, because while I'm sure that seemed like a cool idea, like, and a way to put Nell in the past, it's like everything's so unrealistic. Taking a baby and all these adventures. This baby's up in the middle of the night. This baby doesn't eat ever. This baby never naps. And it wasn't like put in, I feel like if you had a child and had written this book, you'd put in like, but she's in the car nursing when this happened, or like we're trying to find a place for the baby to sleep and the baby puked. And so that was kind of took me out of the story quite a bit. This book also has a huge cast of characters, and while I don't mind books with a huge cast of characters, I felt like 2 to 3 of these characters could have been condensed into one character, and that kind of made it a little bit, I don't know, harder to follow. There were too many different personalities where you didn't really get to know any of them, and you didn't feel like a strong emotional connection with any of them without giving anything away. Some of these characters die at the end, and it's just not sad, and I'm a big weeper when I read, so I feel like the fact that there were too many characters is part of the reason why deaths didn't really affect me. I would say if you like contemporary fantasy, this would probably be a fine read for you, but if you're looking for like a book that's like fantastic about like libraries and maps, that's not really what this is. If you know a lot about libraries, you're going to be put off by a lot of the library stuff. I also read a review where someone said that this is not actually what a cartographer is, what they do. They're more just like specific librarians who take care of maps. I give it 3.25 stars because I'm not like mad I read it, but it definitely wasn't something that like I would really recommend to anyone. Okay, my next review is going to be kind of strange. So I read volumes 4 and 5 of Saga, which I had read the first 4 volumes of this, including this one, years ago. And then I stopped reading them because my kids got a little older, and if you just like leaf through these, there's a lot of like extremely violent images, and I didn't want my kids getting upset by seeing these like really, really gory images. So I stopped reading it, but then I was at the library and I saw them and I was like, oh, I actually really want to finish that series because I'm pretty sure it's done being written. So I got volume 4 again to like refresh what I had already read at the end of the last story, and got volume 5. these are really hard books to review. I give them solid 4 stars. I really like them. They're very graphic, not in terms of like a graphic novel, but like in terms of what the images are. There's a lot of like bodies that have been hurt in war. There's like literally images of women giving birth, like actual zoomed in. So if that's not for you, that's not for you. But I will say that if you like sort of sci-fi, if you like star-crossed lovers, if you like space opera, if you like wars that no one really understands what they're about, these are great reads. They're really short, they're really fast. The artwork's fantastic. They're by Fiona Staples does the artwork, and Brian Vaughn writes the story. So I'm going to continue and finish. Once I return these, I'll get the next 2 and finish the series. Can't wait. So those are all the books I read in April, and now it's time for my announcement in the direction of which this channel is going to start to take. So I read too many books in April, and you're looking at me and thinking, you didn't read that many books in April. You read 9 books. A lot of people read like 15 to 20 books that I watch on YouTube, and that's true. But a lot of people don't have a lot of writing work that they're supposed to be working on. And I really had a problem this month where I was putting off my writing in favor of reading to try to get so many books read so that my wrap-up would be full, and I need to stop doing that because I have a lot of writing work I'm very behind on. And especially this summer, I'm going to have a lot of writing work to get done. So my plan for this channel moving forward is I'm still going to do my wrap-ups and I'm still going to do my TBRs and all that jazz, but I am going to probably cap myself at 7 books a month, which isn't that much less than I currently read. I think I had 9 this month, and I think I have 8 a lot of months, but I need to focus more on my writing. So I will do a couple of videos about writing every month in terms of like what it was like to self-publish and do like the Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo self-publishing, Apple Books, working with a distributor, that kind of thing. That kind of content will be on my channel. I will still do some fun book hauls. I'll still do some fun like books I love type videos, but my wrap-ups are going to have slightly less books a month than they've been having because I am a writer and I do need to write. So if those sound like the kind of videos that you like, if you are curious about any sort of facet of finding a traditional publisher, finding an agent, doing indie publishing, hiring a cover artist, all that kind of stuff, please throw me a comment and let me know, because I can make a ton of videos about that and let you know all the mistakes I made and all the good things I did as well. I hope in today's video you found something wonderful that you would like to read, and I hope right now you are in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. See you soon.